Now I'm really pleased to welcome our next speaker, and he's going to be talking about community and how it relates to DevOps. Nathen Harvey, in fact, leads all of community over Chef. And I don't know about you, I see Chef all the places I go that count. They're a huge supporter of DevopsDays Ohio. Chef has been involved in the creation of so many different DevOps groups around the country, around the world, in fact. And the neat part about Chef, it's not just marketing. What they're doing is they're providing value to the community. In fact, they usually don't ask for much. And they sponsor things. They do a whole lot to support about community. I look at Chef as a leader in community marketing and community engagement. So I'm really pleased to welcome Nathen today. Please join me. Welcome, Nathen.
Thanks, Warner.
Good videos for us today?
I have good videos to watch during the break, yes. But I won't bore you with my awesome videos to get us started. Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing? All right, so quick show of hands, how many of you, this is your first DevOps Days? All right, that's incredible. Welcome, welcome. And what did you think of the open spaces yesterday? Yeah. Those honestly are my favorite part of DevOps Days. So what I want to talk to you about today is community and how I view community as the true secret ingredient to DevOps. It's really what makes DevOps work. A little bit about me. As Warner mentioned, my name is Nathen Harvey. I'm the VP of Community Development for Chef. I also am the co-host on a podcast called The Food Fight Show. If you've ever listened to this show, thank you. And if not, you should subscribe, because then you can listen to me more, and that's awesome. But the Food Fight Show it's the show where DevOps chefs come to do battle. So we talk a lot about DevOps, we talk a lot about Chef on that show. Warner mentioned some videos. There are a couple of links there. You can check those out when we're done, and my Twitter handle as well. So I want to talk about DevOps, and actually before I get to DevOps, I want to talk about my journey with DevOps. And my journey with DevOps actually started right here in the Columbus community. So we're right here today. We're at the Shadow Box. About 30 years ago, I went to elementary school right there. And I lived right there. So I feel like this is a homecoming for me. I also feel like I'm old because it was 30 years ago that I graduated from 8th grade. So you can do the math and figure out that, yes, in fact, I am old. But it's really great to be back in Columbus. So this isn't an origin story about me, though. This is really about DevOps. So where did DevOps start? Well, perhaps you already know this story if you've heard it before or seen this graphic before. But the truth is that DevOps started out of a lot of perverse incentives that we'd set up for our IT teams. We told our developers, go and build something amazing, and you're going to get paid more for the features that you build. That's what your bonus is based on. And then we went over to the operations side of the house, and we said, your job is to keep everything stable, keep everything up and running. And so what this caused was developers wanted to ship more code. They wanted to, maybe they were being measured by the number of code commits that they contributed to the version control system each day. Whereas operations want to keep things stable, so the best way to keep things stable, say no, right? We don't want any change here. So this set up a real perverse incentive system. We were fighting against each other. But what ended up happening was the developers would write the code, and then they would throw it over the wall and expect operations to deploy it. How many of you have ever heard the phrase, it works on my machine? Yeah. How many of you have ever uttered the phrase, it works on my machine? Right. Yeah, some of you are proudly saying that you've said that before, and others of you are ashamed of that fact, and you should be, so you aren't raising your hand. That's cool. But when DevOps was born, it was really about getting developers and operations to collaborate better, to think about why are we actually here. Let's change those incentives and think about who we're here to serve. We're here to serve the customer. We're here to drive our business forward. So how do we tear down this wall of confusion? Well, it's easy. You throw a bunch of tools at it, right? You throw Chef at it, you do some automation. You throw Jenkins at it, you build a pipeline. You do some automated testing. You start collaborating on Git and GitHub. So you're using all of these different tools. If that's the first step you took, I'm sorry to tell you, it's the wrong step. That's not where we need to start. It's not about tooling. DevOps starts with people. And in DevOps, we believe that people come first all the time. You know this inherently, and there's been plenty of research that shows this, that when you have people that come to work and are happy about the work that they're doing, excited about the work that they're doing, and happy to work with the people that they're working with, those people have the best chance to build a great product. And from those great products, you can build great companies. How many of you hate going to work every day? Okay. How many of you in here are hiring? Okay. So we could maybe make some matchmaking while you're here. Think about that. But people first. In DevOps, we want to put our people first, and that's where this idea of community comes from. So when it comes to community, how do you start? Well, I recommend that you start where DevOps started, with development and operations. So how many of you in here, real quick, are developers? Oh, sorry, before you answer that question, I want to set up some rules for this particular poll. Unlike other polls that are maybe happening next week, you can vote multiple times in this one. Okay, so how many of you are developers? Yeah, okay. And on the operations side of the house? Okay. And how many of you are DevOps? Okay. Yeah, I hear you, Leon. And how many of you are business people? No, seriously, how many of you are business people? Okay, if your hand isn't raised right now, I think you should quit your job. Because honestly, to be a true developer, to be a true operations person, to be someone who cares about DevOps, you have to care about the business that you work for. If you don't care about the business that you work for, go find another business to work for. You want to understand what your business is about and how do you drive success within your business. And to drive success, you're going to have to work with other groups within your organization. You're going to have to get better yourself and help the organization move forward. And the way you do that is by forming diverse bonds. So when I first started my journey in DevOps, I was on the operations side. And one of the very first and most instrumental things that I did was I picked up where I sat and I went and sat with the developers. And just simply by sitting with that team, by co-locating myself with them, by going out to lunch with them, what happened was they stopped seeing me as the guy that they threw their code over the wall to and started seeing me as a person, started seeing me as an individual, a human being who cared about the same things that they cared about. Likewise, I stopped looking at them as like these crazy, I won't say the word, these crazy people that write ridiculous code that will never work in a production environment. What do they even understand? So go out to lunch with people from other groups within your organization. Go out to lunch with the developers or with the operations team. But frankly, it goes beyond just development and operations because we're not just trying to change that. We want to change our entire business. So you have to go into other organizations or other parts of your organizations. How many of you know the name of an attorney at your company? How many of you hope to never need to know the name of an attorney at your company? Right. So if you raised your hand only the second time, what you should do is go meet an attorney because what you don't want to do is figure out who's in legal when it's too late. That's a real problem. So go reach out to other groups within your organization. How many of you or your teams have ever felt like we work so hard every single day and no one in this organization gives a crap about the work that we do? Has anyone felt like that? Of course you have. You're in IT. Come on, let's be honest, right? There's a real problem that we have. I think in IT, as we're building things, sure, we get to build some jazzy things, some snazzy things that our customers get to interact with, and that makes others in our business happy and makes our customers happy. But sometimes we're doing other things that help the business get much, much better, and we aren't talking about those well. So I want to give you a little tactic that you can use to help take these ideas of DevOps, take this idea of building community within your organization and spread it throughout your organization. We do this at Chef with a thing that we call demo days. Demo days are pretty simple. We start with a Kanban board. And in that Kanban board, the left-hand side is a list of things that are to be demoed. We hold this meeting every week. We invite anyone who has built something worth sharing to come to that meeting. And here's the thing. At the beginning, when you start these demo days, people will think the only things worth sharing are the big, jazzy features, the big, shiny objects. That's not the only thing that's worth sharing. Sometimes the way that you've automated a process is worth sharing. Sometimes the way that you've streamlined a process or a system is worth sharing. So anyone with anything to show puts a card into the left-hand column of that Kanban board. We invite everyone in the company to join. We hold these demo days via video chat. And when it's your turn to show off what you've built, you take your card and you move it to the middle column, which is the demoing column. A timer starts. You have 5 minutes to show what you've built. You show off that thing. Everyone in the organization can see it. And then we move on to the next person. You record these and you post them internally. When you do this, here's what happens. People in your organization will start to see and appreciate the work that you're doing. You've already taken that first step to go to talk to the other people in your organization. You understand what legal's doing. You understand what keeps your salespeople up at night. Now you're starting to share your work with them. And when you do these demo days, an interesting thing will happen. They will start out slowly. You've invited the entire company. 5 people show up the first time. The next week, 10 people show up. There's a snowball effect as people start talking about the cool work that you're doing. The other thing that's really interesting when this happens, as you're changing and improving the way that you are working, other organizations across your company or other teams across your company are going to want to work in that new way. You may find that finance shows up to show you a way that they streamlined an accounting process. How amazing would that be? And it is important to post these internally so that you can go back and look at them. It's really cool to have a historical record of this was the feature in its first iteration, and we've iterated on this feature over and over. Now look at it. At Chef, we take it a little bit further than posting it internally. From time to time, we actually post our demo days onto YouTube so that we can share with you some of the features that we're working on or some of the features that we've just recently shipped. So think about this. How can you take the things that you're doing internally and expose those to your customers even sooner? DevOps is about compressing feedback loops. Demo days is an excellent way to compress those feedback loops. Now, if we think about dev and ops, right, building things and operating them, demo days feel right for our developers, building new features, or for our automation engineers, building new automation, streamlining new things. But what about on the operations side? How do we take the work that we're doing and share it a little bit more internally, as well as maybe with our community? And to answer that question, I want to ask you another question. How many of you have failed this week? All right, that's cool. And this month? I guess that's a little weird because the month is shorter than the week now. That's odd. In the last month, how many of you have failed? Like in the last 30 days, yeah. How about the last year? Okay, everyone's hand should be up. If your hand's not up, you're probably lying, which is in and of itself a failure, so you should just put your hand up. It's cool. In DevOps, we recognize that we're going to fail. Our systems are going to break. The things we deploy are going to break. Our applications are going to fail. There are so many different things that can fail. Some of them are within our control and some of them are not. But with DevOps, we treat failure as an opportunity to learn. And when you think about building community, what you want to do in a community, you want to be in a community where it's safe to fail. You want to be in a community where it's safe to stand up in front of your peers and say, I don't know what I'm doing, or the thing that I did ended up breaking something. We need to learn from this. We need to understand how can we improve. So we treat failure as an opportunity for learning. And when we have failures, the thing that we do afterwards is we go into a postmortem. And a postmortem, as painful as it may seem, is a great way to help you build community. The idea of bringing together a group of individuals who care about a problem and want to learn from that problem together, that is a very powerful group of humans, and that's a very powerful event. So we want to use these postmortems as sort of a focal point. How do we bring together our community and create an atmosphere of learning and an atmosphere of safety? So when you come together to do a postmortem, we follow a very prescriptive process when we do a postmortem. I'm going to walk you through it really quickly here. So the first thing that we do is we invoke the space. We've had a failure. We are here today to learn from that failure. We are not here today to assess blame. We're not here today to talk about what we would have done or what we could have done or what we should have done. Those things don't help us improve. What we're here to do is learn from this mistake. So very early on in my career, a manager told me that, yes, we're going into a postmortem. Step 0 of any postmortem, assess blame. That manager was wrong. I never follow his advice. So it was good because as soon as he told me that, I knew all of his advice was shit. Oh, I'm sorry. I did that. I'll just embrace it. I said that word. Once you've said, look, we're not here to assess blame, we're here to learn, the next thing to do is describe the incident. We describe the incident because look, this happens all the time. You walk into a meeting with what you think is a common understanding of a problem, or maybe a common understanding of a failure. And you get halfway through the meeting, and you realize that what Leon thinks failed is not at all how I would describe the failure. He has a completely different perspective, a completely different view. So the first thing we need to do is describe the incident. This is what happened. This is what happened. We then need to look at the timeline. So this is what happened. What happened during this incident? What was the first indication that we had that there was a failure? Who took which actions, when? How did they take those actions? What actions were taken, and so forth? From that timeline, you have to ask the entire room, everyone that's part of this, have we captured everything in this timeline, everything to do with the incident? If we have, we can move on. But if not, there may be additional details. And it's important that we understand the entirety of that incident. Now, you may, again, come back to this question of, well, what does a postmortem have to do with community? What we're doing is we're bringing in the perspectives of everyone in our community, and in doing so, we're learning more about the people that we work with, how they work, how they see things, how we can improve that community. Once we've established the timeline, we go through and we look at things like contributing factors, the customer impact. As it turns out, the customer impact is the impact that matters. The impact to you, while it may have been painful, is less important than the customer impact. We need to describe the remediation tasks and the improvement tasks. Here's another thing about those tasks, though. As an organization, we must agree that the identified tasks out of a postmortem get priority in our work queue. I don't know about you, but I sure hate going into a postmortem about an incident that's similar to an incident that we had 2 or 3 months ago, coming up with remediation tasks that are already on my backlog. How many of you enjoy that? It's pretty terrible. You have to take and make priority for those items. And when you're in this postmortem, as you're learning, as you're working with one another, the 2 most important questions to ask, the 2 most important metrics are these. How could we have detected this issue sooner? And how could we have recovered from it sooner? I'm not proud of some of the way that we've handled incidents, but I'm happy to share some of the ways that we've handled incidents. One incident in particular was there was a failed deploy that happened late in the evening on the West Coast. The deploy went out, systems started breaking, none of our monitoring caught it. It was late in the evening, like 11 o'clock Pacific time. So what did the team do that deployed that code? They went to bed, right? Maybe they went to pub, I'm not sure. But in any case, they went away from their computers. Well, the next morning, our colleagues in London woke up, and they were seeing reports of issues on Twitter, in the IRC channels, and so forth. And this is what they did. That kind of looks like maybe it's an outage. I'm not really sure. What do you think? Yeah, maybe, but who do we talk to about that? Well, I'm not really sure who we should talk to about that, and they're probably asleep anyhow. Oh, well, that's cool, because I got a lot of work to do, right? So this went on back and forth for 4 hours. Our community was telling us we had a problem, and we essentially ignored them. And it took 4 more hours until someone on the East Coast woke up and said, oh, wait a minute, there's a thing here. Our time to detect was not very good. And certainly our time to take action after we detected was not very good. And in that postmortem, we found that the biggest deterrent to our time to resolve was the time that it took us to actually detect this is an outage. This is an incident that needs addressing. So sometimes your time to detect will be very, very small. Sometimes the minute you hit the button, you detected the problem. I've been there. So you need to look at both of these metrics because these are the ones that matter. Ask yourselves and your team these questions. How could we have detected this sooner? How could we have resolved it faster? And the answers to those questions go into your backlog. Sometimes the answers to those questions will surprise you. Sometimes the answers are, we need better incident command training or better incident response training. That's one of the things that we learned. I don't really put that in a backlog. It's not a feature I'm going to build. It's something I have to do as an organization. Sometimes it's write more unit tests. Hell, sometimes it's write unit tests. Who comes to the postmortems? Who do you invite to your postmortems? I'll tell you who to invite. I'll tell you what I used to do. In my past life, what I used to do was anyone who had hands-on during the incident has to be in the postmortem. And that was it. And that maybe is how you treat your postmortems today. And that's a good start, but it is nowhere near enough people. So hands-on during the incident, in my previous life, that meant the operations team. One day I decided I'm going to open this postmortem up to the developers. And all of the developers said, no, dude, that's an operations incident. We don't have time or desire to come sit through your postmortem. So I cajoled one of the engineering managers to come sit in the meeting. And he did, but he sat in the back of the room very, very quiet the entire time. Well, we reached the end where we decided how we were going to prevent this issue from happening again. And the operations engineers came up with the solution. And I tell you, it was a brilliant solution. It was gorgeous. But the problem was if you took a couple of steps back and looked at it as a whole, it was a Rube Goldberg experiment. The developer at the end of the meeting spoke up and said, you know, I could also write 2 lines of code and prevent that from ever happening again. Would you like me to do that? Yes, yes, please. Please write those 2 lines of code and be sure you test them. So maybe it's 6 lines of code now. That's cool. But think about that. If the developer had not been in the room, we would have gone off with our baling wire and duct tape and built a brilliant solution to prevent this from ever happening again, but it would not have been the right solution. So I strongly encourage you to invite minimally the required participants are the people that were on the ground, hands on keyboards, fighting the fire, fighting the incident. You also should invite at least the entirety of your engineering team, the entirety of your operations team, and everyone in between. So that's not to say you should disclude security or QA. Whatever departments you have that are technical should be invited. But frankly, you should invite the entire company. Because sometimes you have customer service reps that deal with your customers. They may have heard about that incident before your systems picked it up. We want their perspective and their understanding of that outage there. This also is a way for you to help build community within your organization. You'll get to know and learn from other people within your organization. At Chef, we take it oftentimes a step further. We invite the public. So we will, from time to time, host live, streamed postmortems. We put them on YouTube and invite the world to join. How many of you do that in your organization today? How many of you think that's a brilliant idea? How many of you are really freaking scared to put your postmortems on the internet? Yeah. Sometimes it's just not possible. It's not feasible. But look, we run software as a service. That service you may install and run locally. So the things that we encounter, the incidents that we have, they may impact you as well. So you can learn from that. And frankly, you can learn just from watching other people's postmortems. So if you're not yet ready to invite the public, I would encourage you to write up a blog post about your postmortem, about your incident response when you have an outage. And if you're still not ready to do that, at least go and read the other blog posts. This DevOps community is large. There are many organizations that are publishing publicly postmortem details and incident details. GitHub just last week published a great write-up of an incident that they had and how they handled that, how they addressed it. So when it comes to the public, how do you get involved with that larger DevOps community that's outside of your 4 walls? One way that you do so is by participating in Slack. Now, this short URL, if you want to copy it down or take a picture of it, I will post all of these slides. This will get you to the request form for the Tech Life Slack. Now, I'm going to say some words that I think are true, and so someone's going to have to call me out if I lie here in the next 2 minutes or so. The Tech Life Slack is a local Columbus Slack community. There's a DevOps channel on there. Anyone is welcome to join. You fill out a Google form here. An invitation will be sent to you. You can now participate in that community. There's a DevOps channel there. It's Slack. If you're not familiar with Slack, you can create your own channels. You can have direct one-on-one messages with one another. You can have direct messages with a small group of folks. But this is a great way for you to get and stay involved in your local community. It's probably used for things like announcing meetups that are coming. Werner, did I say any lies about that?
Totally spot on.
All right, I was spot on. I made it all up, but it worked. Fake it till you make it. That's the other piece of advice I have. Okay, so speaking of meetups, how many of you have never been to a meetup? All right. I want you to set a goal for yourself in the next 12 months. Try to make it to a meetup. And I know when I say that to you, what you hear is, when you're done with work, go to work. Like, go do more work. That sounds terrible. I understand that. And maybe your response to me is, but I have a family. Like, what I want to do is go to family after work, and I appreciate that. So if you're in this room and you help organize meetups, think about that as well. Think about alternate times or alternate locations for your meetups. Most meetups happen in the evening after work. But could you host a meetup in the morning before work? Maybe a lean coffee session, a coffee ops session, or a DevOps session about coffee, or a coffee session about DevOps, whatever. You can think about alternate times. And if you work at a company that's local, think about sponsoring meetups. Think about hosting people in your space to come to a meetup. Meetups don't typically need a whole lot of space. We're not talking 200 people. We're probably talking somewhere in the range of 10 to 30 to 50 people at a big meetup. Invite them into your organization. And when you go to meetups, think about, who can I meet within our local community? Go there to hire. Go there to get hired. Go there to connect and learn from your local community. Go there to share what happened during your last postmortem. How did you respond to your last incident? Another great thing that you can do is go to conferences, and you should all give yourselves a pat on the back or a round of applause. You've come to a conference. That's awesome. Coming to a conference it's a big step. You're stepping out of your comfort zone. You're not necessarily with the people that you work with every single day. When you do go to a conference, make sure you get the most out of it. Sometimes that means you bring a coworker or a friend with you, so you have a buddy to help navigate the conference. It definitely means that you participate in the conference. DevOps Days are so brilliant because of the open spaces. And the only thing that makes the open spaces good is that you participate in them. You talk about the ideas that you want to share. You go to the conversations of ideas that were proposed and participate in those. Now, participate does not always mean talk. You don't have to just participate with your mouth. You can participate with your ears as well, actively listening, being an active participant there. But after the conference, go back to your coworkers, go back to your internal community and share what you learned. Pull together a lunch and learn. Maybe you went to the meetup and you met someone, or you met someone here today that lives locally. Invite that person to come to your office for lunch. And then the two of you could share your experience about the conference with your coworkers. Of course, another big part of community is open source. Now, when we say open source, many folks think that to contribute to open source means I have to write code. And it's great if what you're contributing to open source is code. But there are so many other ways to contribute. You can contribute documentation. You can contribute by opening issues. The issues that you open might be, I didn't understand how to use this. Help me understand. Or I tried this thing and it doesn't work for me. You could also look at issues that are in a project that you care about and try to reproduce them. Can you just validate that this is a real error? This is a great way for you to participate in open source, and another opportunity for you to participate in the larger DevOps community. So I started off this talk talking about DevOps as the wall and tearing down the wall between development and operations. In truth, DevOps is more than just collaboration between development and operations. This is our definition. This is my definition of DevOps. It's a cultural and professional movement that is focused on how we build and operate high-velocity organizations born from the experience of its practitioners. So it's a cultural and professional movement like hip-hop or heavy metal. These are cultural and professional movements. It's not a tool. You can't come to Chef and say, I would like to buy 42 units of DevOps, please. We won't sell that to you. It's not how it works. Yes, we will. He might. It's focused on how we build and operate, dev and ops, but high-velocity organizations. You do not create a high-velocity organization by focusing on 2 departments within that organization. You need to broaden your expanse, broaden your reach, broaden your concerns, look outside of just development and operations. And it's born from the experiences of its practitioners. The way that Chef practices DevOps is different than the way that you do, is different than the way that Facebook does or GE. And every organization practices DevOps slightly differently. When it comes to building community, when it comes to DevOps, remember that the people are at the heart of it. We, the community, the individuals within this community, are the reason this community exists, are the reason that this community thrives. Within your organization, as you're building community, as you're trying to build that high-velocity organization, you cannot do it by focusing on tools alone. You must change your culture as well. Your culture reinforces and amplifies the things that your tools do, and then those tools in turn reinforce and amplify the things that you're changing about your culture. Think about the whole solution. Think about everything that you have to change. Community in DevOps truly is our foundation. So I want to leave you with a couple of things here. Just first, a recap. When you want to go and build a community, I've given you 3 options or 3 tactics that you can use to build that internal community. First, go make those diverse bonds. Second, start doing demo days. You'll be surprised by the outcome. Third, start holding more public, more inclusive, more learning-focused public postmortems. And as you go and want to experience and be part of the external community, think about how you can join the online community. Think about going to meetups and conferences, and think about open source. So you are responsible. You're responsible for your learning. No one else is going to push you through. You need to push yourself. You need to take on the learning challenges yourself. You're responsible for your own development, for your own career. You're responsible for a lot of things. But look around this room. Look around the larger community. You are not alone. Find a mentor here today. Find someone that you connect with, that you can keep that connection going over the next 12 months, over the next 18 months, over the next 12 years. Find someone that you can help. Find a way that you can give back. My name is Nathen Harvey. Thank you very much for letting me open today.
Any questions?
You can buy, yes, we will not sell you 42, but we will sell you 43 or more units of DevOps. Absolutely.
Anyone?
What other questions can I answer for you?
Oh, there's a question over here. Hold on. Let me get a mic tube. That way the live stream can get it. So I'll go over to her first and then you're next.
Do you have the ability to go back in your slides at all?
I sure do.
Can you go back to that one about postmortem?
I can't speak backwards while I do it. It breaks the mic, though. This one?
Can you explain the imagery behind that?
Can I explain the imagery behind that? Yeah. It's an amazing comic. The name of the image is Death. Death, postmortem. So, yeah, that's the nature of the image. I think was there another question? Yes.
We have incidents quite often. How do you determine when to have a postmortem?
How do you determine when to have a postmortem? This is a great question. So I'll tell you some of the things we've tried over the years, and some of which worked really well and some of which worked terribly. The one that's the most dramatic answer to that is we found ourselves in a place that is probably going to sound unfamiliar to you. We were sending lots of alerts that were being ignored. I know that sounds very unfamiliar to everyone in this room, right? Nagios has never sent you an alert that you didn't care about. So in order to fix that, we said, what if we try an experiment? Every time someone gets woken up, we will have a postmortem about that event. Well, that didn't really work because it was every single day, like we spent our day in postmortems. But it did help us sort of push, let's change our alerting process. So then the next thing is really you have to look at the customer impact. Did this have a real impact on our customers? And, real impact, is degraded service a real impact? Maybe. Can your customers pay you money? If the answer is no, have a postmortem, right? That's the easy bar to set. I think the important thing is that you, as an organization, start to open them up more, really focus on those two questions. How do I detect it faster? How do I resolve it faster? And then also, anytime you have an incident, think about this question. Do I know enough to answer these two questions without bringing a group of people together? Or can I, in a Google Doc, with a group of people, discover the answer to these two questions? I understand that we all have meeting fatigue, right? How many of you have not enough meetings on your calendar? All right, there are 2 of you in the room. Great. Yeah, that's because you're trying to sell stuff to people. So, of course, not enough meetings. That's cool. I don't know about you, sir, but maybe the same reason. So my advice is not for every alert. Think about these questions. Are you certain that you have the answer to these questions? And can you act on those answers? Also think about, do I have the full picture? And one of the best ways to know do you have the full picture is how long did it take you to detect that, right? So I know I don't have the full picture if Twitter told me I had an outage. My systems need to tell me that I have an outage. My alerting systems, my monitoring systems need to tell me that.
Thank you, Nathen.
You bet.
Nathen will be around all day.
I'll be here all day.
So if you have other questions.
Thanks very much.